The funeral flowers on my reputation were still fresh when my own sister decided to destroy the happiest day of my life. For 6 years, my family treated me like a criminal, turning their backs on me because of a cruel, calculated lie my sister invented out of pure jealousy. They believed I was running a dangerous street operation, never bothering to ask for my side of the story. I rebuilt my life from absolute zero, found the love of my life, and planned a wedding they were never supposed to attend. But on the day I stood in my white dress, my dad walked through the doors, holding a thick manila envelope that changed everything. My sister thought she'd ruin me forever. She had no idea that the trap she set 6 years ago was about to snap shut on her instead. My name is Chloe. I'm 28 years old, and for 6 long years, I lived as a ghost to the people who were supposed to love me most. Growing up, my older sister, Vanessa, was always the center of attention, but behind her sweet smile was a cold, calculating jealousy. When I graduated from college and started building a successful corporate career on my own, Vanessa couldn't handle it. 6 years ago, she did the unthinkable. To cover up her own spiraling life, Vanessa planted fake financial ledgers and illicit paraphernalia in my old bedroom. She went straight to our deeply conservative parents with a devastating lie. She convinced them I was running a dangerous, illegal street operation to fund my lifestyle. I'll never forget the night my dad confronted me. There was no trial, no chance to defend myself, and no benefit of the doubt. Blinded by Vanessa's performance, my parents disowned me on the spot, calling me a disgrace and throwing me out into the street. Vanessa stood behind them, watching me pack my life into trash bags with a triumphant smirk. They cut off all contact, believing every word of her calculated story, leaving me utterly alone. Being cast out by your own flesh and blood changes you in ways you can't fully prepare for. The months following that night were a blur of cheap motel rooms, cold meals, and endless tears. The lies spread like wildfire through our community. Mutual friends blocked my number, extended family refused to return my calls, and aunts and uncles I'd spent every holiday with looked at me like I was a monster. I went from having a bright future to working 2 grueling jobs just to afford a cramped studio apartment on the edge of town, carrying a ruined reputation I didn't deserve. But adversity has a way of revealing who you truly are. I refused to let Vanessa's cruelty define the rest of my life. I poured every ounce of my remaining energy into rebuilding, saved every penny, and eventually launched a small, high-end event planning business. It was during one of my earliest contract jobs that I met Mark. Unlike my family, Mark didn't listen to rumors or quiet gossip. He judged me solely on my character, my work ethic, and my heart. For the first time in years, I felt safe. As our relationship grew, so did my business, and within 4 years, I had built a prosperous, quiet life completely independent of the people who had abandoned me. While I was quietly rebuilding my life from the ground up, karma was coming for Vanessa. Without me around to use as a scapegoat, her perfect illusion began to crumble. Her entitlement and reckless spending habits caught up with her, and she sank deep into debt, living off borrowed time and borrowed money. But despite her downward spiral, Vanessa kept tabs on me through mutual acquaintances, and when news reached her that I had built a thriving business and was engaged to Mark, her bitter jealousy flared back up with full force. She couldn't stand the thought of me being happy. When she found out about our upcoming wedding at a high-end estate, Vanessa decided that throwing me into the street 6 years ago wasn't enough. She wanted to ruin me completely. Using burner phones and fake emails, she launched a smear campaign against my business, contacting the wedding venue and our catering vendors. She flooded them with anonymous warnings, claiming I was an unstable fraud who would destroy their reputation if they hosted my event. She was desperate to see my wedding canceled, hoping to push me back into the dark corner she had forced me into years ago. What Vanessa didn't realize was that I wasn't the defenseless 22-year-old girl she had thrown to the wolves 6 years ago. When my venue coordinator called me about the strange, anonymous emails, I knew instantly who was behind them. The venom in those messages bore my sister's signature. But instead of panicking, a strange, cold clarity washed over me. It was time to stop running and finally uncover why she had been so obsessed with destroying me in the first place. I hired a discreet private investigator to dig into Vanessa's finances. What he uncovered was beyond anything I had imagined. 6 years ago, right before I was cast out, my grandmother had left behind a sizable family trust fund meant to be split between us. Vanessa hadn't just framed me out of jealousy. She had manufactured the drug accusation to ensure my parents would legally disown me, forfeiting my share of the trust directly into her hands. She had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars and used my reputation as collateral. With bank records, forged documents, and the investigator's complete file in hand, I made a calculated move. I didn't call the police, and I didn't confront her. Instead, 2 weeks before the ceremony, I anonymously mailed a single golden wedding invitation to my father's home office. Tucked inside was a thumb drive containing every single piece of evidence, accompanied by a simple, handwritten note. If you want to know the truth about what happened 6 years ago, show up. The morning of my wedding arrived, wrapped in soft sunlight and a heavy, suffocating tension. Standing in front of the mirror in my bridal suite, the lace of my white dress felt light, but the weight in my chest was unbearable. I had spent 2 weeks wondering if my father would even open that envelope, or if he had thrown my truth straight into the trash just like he had thrown me out 6 years ago. My hands shook as I adjusted my veil, every nerve on edge as the ceremony music began to drift in from the gardens. Suddenly, a soft knock echoed at the door. When it opened, my heart stopped. My father stood in the doorway. In 6 years, he had aged a decade. His shoulders were slumped, his hair was entirely gray, and his eyes were red and hollow. In his trembling hands, he clutched the thick legal folder and the thumb drive I had mailed him. He stepped into the room, swallowed hard, and really looked at me for the first time in 2,200 days. Without a word, tears spilled down his face. He fell to his knees right there on the bridal suite rug, sobbing uncontrollably. He told me he had spent the last week going through every document, every bank statement, and every forged signature with his own corporate attorney. The horror of what he had done to his innocent daughter had finally shattered his world. He begged for my forgiveness, weeping as he realized he had banished his honest child to protect a thief. I knelt beside him, and though the pain of 6 years couldn't vanish in 6 seconds, the truth had finally set us free. The heavy wooden doors of the reception hall swung open, and the room went dead silent. Vanessa had snuck into the back, wearing a smug smirk as she waited to watch my special day collapse under the weight of her rumors. She thought she was arriving for my execution. She had no idea she was walking straight into her own. My father stood up and walked directly to the front stage, taking the microphone from the coordinator. The room held its breath. Vanessa's smile flickered, turning uncertain as Dad looked straight at her with cold, furious eyes. His voice echoed through the speakers, loud and unwavering. He announced to every guest, family member, and mutual friend present that 6 years ago, a monstrous lie had torn our family apart. He publicly declared that I was completely innocent and that my sister, Vanessa, was a thief who had framed me to steal my inheritance and destroy my life. Gasps erupted across the room. Vanessa's face drained of all color as Dad held up the police report and forensic audit documents. He revealed that the authorities and bank fraud investigators had already been notified, and 2 uniformed officers stepped into the foyer right behind her. In front of everyone she had ever tried to impress, Vanessa was confronted with her crimes, her web of deceit completely exposed as the officers escorted her out into the bright afternoon light. The legal storm that followed was swift and uncompromising. Vanessa faced severe criminal charges for grand larceny, forgery, and financial fraud. With the evidence my investigator and Dad's attorneys gathered, she was forced to surrender what was left of her assets to pay back the stolen trust fund, along with facing court-ordered probation and community service. Her social status, her false prestige, and her web of lies were permanently shattered. She was left with the exact isolation and public disgrace she had tried to sentence me to 6 years ago. For my father and me, the road to healing was long, but it started that day. He didn't expect instant forgiveness, and I didn't promise it, but having the truth out in the open allowed us to begin rebuilding our bond on a foundation of genuine trust. Standing beside Mark at the altar, holding his hand as we finally exchanged our vows, I felt a deep, overwhelming peace. The dark chapter that had defined my 20s was officially closed. I had reclaimed my name, my honor, and my family, proving that no matter how carefully a lie is constructed, the truth will always find its way to the light. Now, I'm curious about your thoughts. If you were in my position, could you ever forgive a family member who destroyed 6 years of your life, or would you walk away forever? Comment below, and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more dramatic stories.